let's first start by this. What drew my attention to this field specifically is that, Jim, the more I look into the mainstream, there is always this proposition that unguided chance events that are random can produce everything around us. And this, spans from how the cosmos was originated, random fluctuations and stuff, how genetic material came into being, primordial cells, how those cells then evolved into creatures, how we have humans, how we have conscious beings and awareness and intelligence. Everything, when there is no explanation, is chance. As a scientist who really goes into the lab and invents things and puts plenty of definite thought and work into that, is this a rational scientific position, according to your experience as a scientist and even an inventor?
No, it doesn't make any sense to me, really. I can't fathom this. We put so much work and so much detailed thought into trying to carry out even the simplest of chemical reactions, the new reactions that we do, to think that something like just even a living cell could have come about by a random process is just crazy hard. This is just silliness. And people will project this out and say, well, it got to a certain stage and evolution took over. And just by saying that, there's this this homage that they think has to be paid. Oh, evolution took over, and then we can take care of all of this. No, we can't just throw this at the doorstep of evolution and say evolution took care of this. And so this is an irrational approach. And I even see this in graduate students. You ask them, well, how did that happen? And they say evolutionarily. Well, because they've said evolutionarily, the audience now has to sit in quietness. Oh, okay, so evolution did it. Now we understand. No, I don't understand any of that, nor does anybody else. But because they use that word, we're supposed to somehow bow down and just accept it. And as soon as you ask for details, okay, take me through the process of how evolution would do that. Let's take it one step at a time. And then they get angry. Everything starts to wither around the edges, and you see that nobody really understands this. So just because we throw out that term that has become a sacrosanct term that you should not ever oppose it is a real problem, because it does an injustice also to our students to think that you can just throw out that word and now nobody can touch you. So we try to explain things, and this is not some holy word that's untouchable.
And actually, two things that you've just said caught my attention. So the first one is being angry, which is something I experience every day, because due to the videos that I put out on my channel, I go into those conversations every day, tens of them. And the second thing is, do you see this in other fields of science? That this one word that is a banner would be given as an explanation for such multitude of things, and we have to accept it. So number one, what is your explanation for the anger? And do we see this in any other fields of science? Other real empirical fields of science?
Well, I mean, scientists are like anybody else, but I don't know that there are fields of science where you see such anger as you do in this saying this word evolution and trying to not embrace it. We're seeing more of that around issues that are scientific and pseudoscientific, and things can move more toward the political, and then it gets like that very rapidly. But I think that's often normal human behavior, that if you don't have an answer, that you can react back with anger in a way to quench the argument and to stop it. And I think that's normal behavior, and scientists are just normal. I mean, we have our own fears. We want to allay our fears. We care about our reputation. We care about things that we've said and our work, and we don't like when people start publishing papers that contradict our work. I mean, it keeps us up at night. I mean, we're just like everybody else. So this is normal human behavior, I suppose.
So the takeaway from that is that scientists are not gods, are they?
No, they're not gods. And you know, when we don't have answers, we often get angry. And you see this sort of thing also in religious arguments. When people stop having answers, they'll start getting angry and they'll start shouting and pounding their fist on the table as if that somehow has given them now authority to not have to answer certain questions. So when you don't have answers to questions, you have a tendency to react back with anger. If you know it very easily, you just answer it.
Yeah, that's what a reasonable person will do. So let's go to our second one. It's our opening question about life. And to me and to many others, life is an enigma to material science. I've never seen a clear explanation of what is life other than its material features. But whenever you go in a discussion, somebody will say it's just chemistry. So you're the chemist and a renowned one. What is your reaction when people say life is chemistry?
You know, this is bumping up against philosophy, and it's a hard question. So, for example, you could take a wonderful person, say Mother Teresa, who spent her life in India serving the poor, who had they take this oath of chastity, of poverty, and of service to the poor for the rest of their life. I mean, that's an amazing oath, that you're going to remain chastity, you're going to remain unmarried, you're going to remain in poverty, you're never going to seek money, and you're going to devote your life to serving the poor. So here is this great woman who did that. Now you could take a woman like that and you could give her 1 milligram. 1 milligram is like the size of a grain of salt. And you could give her 1 milligram of material, and that could affect her brain enough to make her into a mass killer, a mass murderer. So there's certainly something chemical going on there. So there's chemistry that happens that affects our brains, that affects our actions. On the other side of it, there's things that are very hard to chemically understand. It doesn't mean that because we don't understand it today, we will never understand it. It just means that today we don't understand it. So for example, my granddaughter is visiting. I haven't seen her in almost 2 years, my 2 granddaughters. I mean, the younger one, she just stays by my side. She will sleep next to me. She wants me to hold her hand when she goes to sleep. I mean, she's right there. My love for her is so great. How do I explain that with science? How do I explain that with chemistry? I would sacrifice my life 100 times for her if I could. How do I explain it? How do I explain that when I'm working on all of these things and all of this great research and all of these great ideas, that 60% of my CPU is thinking about that girl? You know, why is that? What is it that makes me want to be with her and embrace her? These things are hard to understand. There is no doubt that within life, chemistry is exploited for the purposes of life. But is there something that goes beyond that? And certainly the materialist says, no, it's just the chemistry that goes on here. And there are other things, even within science, which gives hints that it extrapolates beyond the materialistic world. And I'm sorry for moving this conversation, but you see this, for example, in NDE, near-death experiences, where their heart has stopped, where they're and they are functionally dead for minutes, 5 minutes or something. And then they come back and they describe to you things that scientifically are very hard to understand, where they describe to you that they raised up out of their bodies and they saw things that were on the tops of high counters, high cabinets in the hospital room. And then they saw things on the roof of the building that they could never know were there. And then they go and they see these actual very features on the roof of the building. So there are things that happen even within science when you start probing these people as scientists that science is unable to understand with the materialistic world, and it has to start touching on the metaphysical. So even within science, we bump up against the metaphysical when it comes to talking about issues of life. So that's about as deep as I can go, Ahmed.
So is it fair that it is to say that it is unfair to life to just reduce it to chemistry with such a blunt statement?
It's certainly unfair in the respect that there's so much of the chemistry, even of the chemistry of life, that we don't understand, that we have no way today of explaining. Again, we might be able to explain this in 100 years or 200 years or 500 years from now. Just like if you asked a man in the 1700s, why is it that when the parents are tall, the child is tall? When the parents are short, the child is short. And you know, they may say, well, this is God. Well, okay, well, this is God, but scientifically, how does this happen? They wouldn't know. Well, now we know that the genetic code is inscribed in the DNA, and the features, the enzymes action that's going to build the certain features is encoded from that master plan that's inherited from our parents. So we understand more today than we did 300 years ago about how this thing happened. So over time, we may not be able to understand it. It's unfair to say, well, this is just chemistry, because there's a lot of chemistry we don't understand. And it's unfair to say this is just chemistry because there are features that science does not explain for us, like the love of a man for his grandchild, or the love between a husband and their spouse, of the emptiness that's felt when one spouse dies after they've been married for 50 years, the emptiness that comes. How do you explain this chemically? Maybe there is a chemical explanation, but it's not fair to just say, well, that's just chemistry, any more than it's fair to say in this day and age, well, that's just, that's just inherited. Well, give me more details, or any more than it's fair to say, well, that's just evolution. Evolution does that. That's not fair. Tell me more. Give me more specificity.